Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Glenn Ivey from the 4th District in Maryland. Great to have you with us once again. I'm going to rip up the script here. We're going to get to Iran in just a moment. But I know that you served on the task force on the attempted assassination of Donald J. Trump. And with that experience, I wanted to ask you to comment on what we saw outside the White House yesterday. Somebody who tried to get in, fired a weapon, was shot dead by Secret Service as a result of that. What do you make of that occurrence in complement to what we saw less than a month ago at the White House Correspondents Association dinner? The fact that the president is a target here, reporters are a target as well. How is your focus shaped by the work that you did on that task force?
You know, there was a scenario yesterday where really the guy wasn't any place near the president or any intended target, apparently. And I think he'd had two prior incidents like that. He seemed to be someone trying to make a statement more so than actually, trying to get to the president. Butler was a whole different scenario. So that was one where, another inch slightly to the right, he would have been killed. And so, I think the Secret Service has learned a lot from the mistakes that were made at Butler and made improvements and adjustments. But, when the president's out, especially at campaign events or open events like that, those are going to be much different scenarios than when he's in the White House or safely ensconced inside a building with a, extended perimeter around it.
After that incident, the president did, I would say tweet, but it's not, it's a Truth Social, saying that, presidents need a safe and secure place, inferring, I think, that this is justification, again, for the ballroom. You're on appropriations. Do you think the president is going to get that funding, and do you think that's something that's needed?
Well, no, I don't think that it's needed. I mean, for example, if you built the ballroom, I guess the suggestion he's making is that every event he would do publicly would be in the ballroom, which of course is preposterous. The president has to go around and, do events out about the country and overseas. So building the ballroom doesn't fix the issues that we saw at Butler, unless he wants to cloister himself in the White House for the rest of his term. And I know that he doesn't. The other part of that, too, is when people are running for president and they haven't been elected yet, we're still going to have the same issues about them campaigning outside of the White House because they can't do it in the White House to start with. That's government property, and you can't do a campaign on government property. So it's a total red herring from that perspective. Whether he gets the funding or not, I think even the Senate Republicans were balking at the amount and the change in the ask. I think initially when he floated this, all the money was going to come from the private sector, which I think is still inappropriate because of potential influence. But, now it's $1 billion from taxpayer money. I don't see why we would want to do that.
I love that shade from the House Appropriations. Even the Senate appropriators were balking at that amount. Let me ask you to respond to what we heard from the president yesterday, sort of how you're thinking about the prospects of a deal here. Yes, you sit on appropriations. Your remit isn't strictly in foreign affairs, but you're thinking, I'm sure, about the cost of this war, the widening cost and remit of this war. Where do you think we are in these negotiations? Are you satisfied that Congress at least has enough blanket awareness of what's going on in these negotiations?
No, I think we've been totally marginalized. I know there's, their lead House members and Senate members on foreign affairs and intelligence and the like, and the leaders are supposed to get additional information, and maybe they are, but I haven't been hearing exactly what that is, and I think they've been frustrated as well. So the other problem too is, there's no other way to say it, but the administration lies all the time about the status of these negotiations. He's been saying they're close to a deal now for week after week, and nothing seems to happen. And the one time where they did actually float specifics, I think that the things that Iran had proposed were totally unacceptable. I'm hoping we can at least get back to a place where we were as well off as we were under the Obama Treaty. At this point, please just reopen the Strait of Hormuz first and foremost. To talk about doing something with respect to the nuclear piece, I don't know that he can get there from where he is. And even then, he lied about, I guess he said in June, I thought he'd obliterated all of their nuclear capability. And here we are again. So it's really hard to know what you can believe from the administration or not. But at a minimum, he needs to include Congress, the leadership from the House and the Senate from both parties. Let's work together and see if we can get out of the mess that he's created.
Well, speaking of working together, there was a surprising amount of backlash from your Republican colleagues in both chambers last night, responding to even the outlines of this potential deal, saying it didn't go far enough. It left us in a worse place than the U.S. and the region were before this conflict started. Watching people like Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, stalwart allies of the president, come out openly on Twitter, on X, and post that this is a bad idea, do you think that helps any kind of coalescence for some of the things that Democrats have been trying to get done, and that is to curtail some of this Pentagon funding or to actually pass a war powers resolution?
I think we're going to get the war powers resolution eventually, and I think it's going to be hard for the Republicans to sustain the position that the war should keep going when it's putting so much pain and financial pain on the American people. I just filled up my gas tank yesterday in the car, and it was like over $80. And I'm not driving a big SUV. Gas costs $1.50 more than it did just a few months ago. Every American's feeling that, and they're gritting their teeth at the Trump administration every time they have to pay for that tank of gas. So I think that's unsustainable. The problem, he's painted himself into a corner, though. He made big, statements about what he was going to get out of this, and it's not clear that he can get there. And he's put, especially Senate Republicans, but many of my House Republican colleagues as well, in a really tough situation. On the one hand, they want to get out of this war because of the gas prices and the impact and the total unpopularity of it. On the other hand, if he gets out but doesn't, achieve any of the goals that he put out there at the front end, he can't save face. He looks like he failed. I think he's going to have to swallow this hard and try and move forward from there, because I'm not seeing an easy path forward. And Iran has successfully stalemated us, on the ground on this. So I don't know how he's going to get out of this situation. I don't see an exit ramp that's easy for him, but he's going to have to do something. He's going to have to do it fast.
I want to get the perspective of Glenn Ivey, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, on this anti-weaponization fund that was announced this week. $1.8 billion here for those who have grievances against the Justice Department, against the federal government. What do you make of that as a former federal prosecutor, and what power does Congress have to constrain this or preclude it from happening? Christina mentioned just a moment ago that the blowback the president has gotten from his party on the prospects of this Iran deal. I should say there was a lot of blowback from members of his own party about the creation of this fund as well.
Absolutely. I mean, frankly, I was shocked. I didn't really believe it at first, but, once it was confirmed, I was disgusted. And, former DOJ prosecutors, people who were still there, are shocked. And I think you're seeing that across the board, even with Senate and House Republicans. They just, it's just a shocking thing to do. And it looks like he was targeting the J6 defendants insurrectionists, actually, who had been convicted, I think over 1,500 of them. He pardoned all of them. That eliminated their requirement to pay restitution to the people that they hurt. And now he's going to say, okay, we're going to use $1.8 billion in American taxpayers' money to pay these guys and other, former convicted felons at the same time. It's disgusting. And the structure of the deal, with the IRS and the Department of Justice, both of whom serve at his pleasure, you didn't actually have any kind of objectivity in there. And the only to the extent you did, it was the judge. And she expressed real concern about the lack of objectivity and neutrality. And adverse, parties in the scenario. But I think the politics of this are going to demand some kind of fix. I know there's a real effort to do something legislative. There's a couple options on the table. I'm not sure which one will play out. But I think at the end of the day, none of this money is going to be used to pay off people like that.
You're sure of that?
This fund should be liquidated entirely.
That's because acting AG Todd Blanche did an interview with our colleague over at CNN and was asked, in the smaller realm, the viability and legality and ethics of this fund aside.
Other than the play, Mrs. Lincoln.
Yeah, other than the play, Mrs. Lincoln. How did you do the play? Thanks, David. If it does go forward, is there a preclusion for giving money to people who assaulted police officers. And Blanche's response was, well, that'll have to be litigated or decided by this amorphous, undefined committee members who are distributing this money. If you can't stop it, would you at least want to see something that precludes people who have been convicted of felonies or violent acts during January 6th or other incidents being disqualified?
Well, you know, certainly, but depending on who else they line up, and the names I've heard, it's just been a real rogues gallery. Michael Flynn, for example, you know, just names that have faded from public view, thankfully, and here they are again. Rudy Giuliani, folks like that. It's like, you know, please give me a break. But, you know, I think it's the tax dollars that, you know, they keep saying, for example, he just said a little while ago, he didn't care about what's going on with the American public as far as, you know, the impact and their financial difficulties. We could use that $1.8 billion to do other things, like extend the healthcare tax credits, for example, or extend SNAP benefits, for example. But, you know, he's focused on paying off people who, you know, have really false claims against the United States and shouldn't be getting a dime. In fact, they should be paying the United States the restitution that they owe. So I think this is going to be defeated one way or the other. Might be a clawback. It might be a challenge to the structure of the this board or whatever, because it certainly wasn't established by Congress. I mean, what exactly is it? And you know, there's no authorization for the use of the funds from the appropriations committees either.